Good morning. We are on Kuf Daled Amud Aleph 104a. We're still on the discussion of the text of the Havdalah. The truth is that for the practical application of the text of the Havdalah, we already concluded yesterday what we should say, right? So theoretically, we can go to the Shulchan Aruch now, but still the Gemara discusses it a bit more. So I want to finish the Gemara's discussion completely on the text of the Havdalah, and then we'll go to the Shulchan Aruch that discusses that text. So let's remind ourselves again that the text we have in the Siddur is gleaned and taken from this Gemara. So if you see something in the Gemara that doesn't jive with what you usually do on a Saturday night, don't fret. The text you read knows about this text and built it based on this text. So we're reverse engineering. Let's just keep that in mind. Another thing to keep in mind, of course, is that at the time when this is written, there was no formalized text of the Havdalah yet, no formalized text of anything. There were the sages who constructed outlines how something should be done, and it was up to the individual practitioner to decide how they wanted to fulfill the mandate described in the outline of our sages.
Question.
Yeah.
Why such a lapse in time from when it was written until the Shulchan Aruch was written, and then once the Shulchan Aruch was written, it was kind of refined over the years?
There isn't actually any lapse of time, but it's not for now to go to the history. There's many works in between the Gemara's time and the Shulchan Aruch's time that informed the Shulchan Aruch. We discussed it a little bit on Shabbos. There was a Torah before that. There was the Rambam before that. There was the Rosh and the Rif. And the Torah scholarship was never ceased being writing.
Right,
and every text that comes along is a refinement of the text before. There are times when someone does something so monumental and gains such big popularity that it sticks by divine providence. But that's not to say that there was nothing. That there was like a lapse in time and nothing was being written. There's no gap in the writing.
I'm not saying it wasn't written. I'm saying that what we do today is different from what we've done.
No, it's not. It's just that, okay, I don't want to go there now because it's not the time to discuss the history. Okay. We just cite the most recent source. So if I say without the rights to do this, it's not because no one was doing it before.
No.
It's because as the most recent authority. Like doing it now. No. People were always doing it. I'm just citing to the most recent authority collecting that piece of information. It doesn't mean it wasn't done before.
No, I know.
Right? There are little nuances here and there, but there's no lapse in time. Okay, well, I don't want to go down this now because it's not time to discuss the history of halacha, although I do have in the back of my head this desire to do a series on the history of halacha.
Okay.
Because it would help so many people to hear quotes from people like, what are we talking about? Who's talking when and where are they speaking and when were they speaking and why were they speaking? What were they saying? And like, there's a little confusion. Like, Dr. wrote a siddur. So if he wrote the whole siddur, no one's stopping before him. Like, what are we talking about? Just to understand how halacha evolved and how these writers work and how we should put them in context. It's in the back of my head, and God will do it.
The same thing as science.
But not now.
It's the same as science and astronomy. We're learning and
they build on top of each other.
Refining.
Yeah. So you're constantly looking to the most recent source, but it doesn't mean it didn't exist before the most recent source. Anyway, we'll God willing, we will do that one day. Take us from Sinai down to the English text in the siddur that you use, and how we got from there to there. We'll do that one day, God willing. Okay, so let's begin then. It's about maybe a third from the top of the page, or a quarter from the top of the page. The line begins with the word gufa. Gimel, Vav, Fei, Aleph, gufa. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So gufa literally means the body. Or in this context of the Gemara, gufa would mean the text itself. Let's look at the text itself. This phrase, right? There's always like these key phrases in the Gemara that help you. Right. Okay, exactly. A corpus, a work, you call it gufa, and that's right. So that's what gufa means, the text itself. So there's always like these key words in the Gemara that help you understand what the Gemara is doing. So when the Gemara says gufa, what the Gemara is doing is it's taking a text that was raised earlier, or a passage that was raised earlier in some other context, and now extracting it to discuss it itself. Right? So in the previous story, we had Rava making Havdalah, and he said the Havdalah text as we say it, which had three distinctions plus the fourth one, right? The three distinctions were, we say Hamagdal Kodesh Nechal, the one who distinguishes between the holy and mundane. It's one. Ben night and dark, light and darkness, that's two. Ben Yisrael La'amim, between the Jewish people and the nations of the world, that's three. We're declaring three distinctions. And then we repeat the fourth one, which is not part of the number, it's just there, so it can be similar to the closing. Namely, the one who separates between the seventh day and the 6 days of creation. And then we say, blessed are you, God our Lord, who sanctified, one who separates between holy and the mundane, right? So we had three. And then Rav Acha Bar Yaakov challenged him by saying, there's a text which says the minimum to do is 3, the maximum to do is 7. And then he defended his position, good morning, by saying that I'm really doing 3, I'm just adding a 4th to make it help the closing. So the Gemara now wants to go back to that original text which said your minimum is 3 and your maximum is 7, and understand that text in more depth. Yes, this is where we are. Good morning. Yes, we're clear what the Gemara wants to do. Now we clear on what the Gemara wants to do. The Gemara is now going to take that text that I quoted yesterday and examine it itself. So whenever you see that word gufa, that's what the Gemara is doing. The Gemara is extracting a text that was cited earlier as a proof text, and now going to examine it independently as it on its own. Yeah.
You made it clear last time.
Last time I said gufa.
This is just the way it's being formulated. Don't get into that.
It's like a zoom in on a
That's right.
magnifier.
That's correct. That's right. I closed the discussion. Now it says 1 second. You raised a text earlier. Let's look at that for a second. Okay. All right. So the Gemara raised a text which says minimum 3 Havdalahs, maximum 7, and the Gemara wants to now analyze that very text itself. It was raised in the context of what Rava did, and we closed the discussion on what Rava was doing. Right? We understood why he was doing what he's doing, and that's the way we do it till today. But the Gemara wants to analyze that text itself. Okay, so let's begin. Kufa, the very text itself that you quoted earlier, namely, Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Oishia. Rabbi Lezer said in the name of Rabbi Oishia. This is the text that we raised earlier. Hapoiches, when one does Havdalah, and he wants to make his Havdalah as brief as possible, La Yivches should do no less misholosh than 3. He has to declare 3 types of Havdalah, 3 types of distinction in his Havdalah service. This is what Rabbi Lezer, son of Rabbi Oishia, said, which we learned already earlier was a dispute, right? Rabbi Huda Nasi said that a minimum that you can do 1, as long as you declared 1 Havdalah, 1 separation between Shabbos and the weekday, that's enough. But Rabbi Oishia here says it's got to be a minimum of 3. And one who decides to elongate his Havdalah, he wants to do a longer one, more elaborate. La Yosef should not do more al sheva than 7. Okay, so you have 3 minimum or 7 maximum. Of how many, right? There's no text. Remember, there's no text l'Haggadah. There's no text l'Havdalah, I'm sorry. You just have an instruction. Hold a cup of wine and make a declaration to separate between Shabbos and Yom Tov. Go figure out the text yourself is essentially the instruction. Because at this time, they're all familiar with Hebrew. So they're all comfortable doing this until the sages realize they aren't comfortable. And then they formalized the actual text as a siddur. That came later. And even when that is there, it isn't necessarily as fixed as we like to think it is. Meaning to say, if you knew the rules and principles of the text, you can amend it. Right? So if you know how to do it, in your prayer, where we ask Hashem for healing, you can insert a specific prayer for someone who needs healing. If you know how to, right? The same thing with other brachas as well, you can add, right? So theory, if you were making Havdalah and you were in the mood and you wanted to add more or whatever, you can add up to 7 different distinctions that you may make, but you have to know what they are and which ones you're allowed to and how to formulate them and so on and so forth. Yeah. That's why they made a standardized text, because people didn't know how to do it. That's correct. That's why they made a standardized siddur in text. That's correct. Come in. Okay. No worries. So Meisvei, the Gemara challenges. Anybody remembers what Meisvei means? What kind of challenge is Meisvei?
Higher authority.
Meisvei is from a higher authority.
Challenge with using a higher.
Challenged by using a higher authority. So who is speaking? Very, very good. So who is speaking? Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Oishia are both scholars of the Gemara's era, the post-Mishnaic era. They're Amarayim. Early Amarayim, but Amarayim nonetheless.
Earlier would.
Sorry?
Earlier would mean that there's more weight than later, you know?
That's correct.
Closer to time,
So that's right. So the Gemara is now going to challenge this statement by quoting a Mishnaic age text, which predates Rabbi Oshia.
That's why it's amazing.
That's why it's a Meisvei. Correct. So Meisvei, the Gemara challenges that. Did we follow what Yeshua just said? Everybody follow what Yeshua? No? Yeah? Yeshua just correctly noted that when the Gemara introduces a question with the word Meisvei, it's indicative of the fact that the text we're about to raise as a challenge is a text of a greater authority than you speaking.
But by greater authority, you mean
Earlier generation.
just earlier?
So if you're talking to someone of the Mishnah, you quote a verse and say Meisvei. If you're talking to someone from the Gemara, you quote a Mishnah and say Meisvei. Otherwise, you'd use other formulations for your question.
So it's not someone necessarily who knows more, it's just someone
From an earlier generation, that's a higher authority. Yes. So that would be a Meisvei, as opposed to a Rami, which would be a contradiction, as opposed to Matkif would be like a rational challenge. Right? There's different words that indicate what kind of challenge is being presented, and the word Meisvei is a challenge from a higher authority. Yeah.
Interesting. A lot of they have this originalist. Originalist.
Yeah.
Because it's the originalist going.
Yeah,
far back
exactly.
when-
I actually want us to have a discussion on that. We're to our stance if it's originalist or not, or interpretive.
Right.
I think we're a kind of combination. But anyway, yeah, we're not as binary as contemporary
Exactly.
law or politics is for that matter. But for another time.
Right.
Okay, so Meisvei, this text reads as follows: quote, this is the Mishnaic text now speaking, and thus challenges Rabbi Oshia, who's a post-Mishnaic scholar. Rabbi Oshia said a minimum of 3 and maximum of 7. This text says, one makes Havdalah. Here, this text tells us which dates of the year you should be making Havdalah. That's what this text says. Number 1, the Motzai Shabbosis. When you're, Motzai means when you're going out. That's what Motzai means, you're going out. Motzai Shabbosis, when you're going out of Shabbos, Saturday night. Or Motzai Yom Tovim, when you're leaving Yom Tov. Motzai Yom Kippurim, and when you're leaving Yom Kippur. Motzai Shabbos li Yom Tov, and when you're going out of Yom Tov, when you're going out of Shabbos into Yom Tov, so Yom Tov is Saturday night, right? That's when you make Yak Nahaz, that's when you make the combined Kiddush and Havdalah. But here too, you make Havdalah. Motzai Yom Tov l'Chol HaMoed, and when you're leaving Yom Tov, going to Chol HaMoed, the intermediary days of the holiday, so it's after the first nights of Sukkot, going into Chol HaMoed, after the first nights of Pesach, going into Chol HaMoed. Aval Motzai Yom Tov l'Shabbos HaRagil, but don't make Havdalah when you're leaving Yom Tov, going into an ordinary Shabbos. Leaving Motzai Yom Tov l'Shabbos, and not from Yom Tov into Shabbos. Haragil is the beginning of the next statement. Right? Not if Yom Tov is Friday, then Friday night you wouldn't make Havdalah leaving Yom Tov. You'd only make Kiddush of Shabbos. Why is that?
Shabbos is a higher.
Shabbos is a higher holiness. You only make Havdalah when you're going from a higher holiness to a lower holiness. And here's the pecking order: weekday, Chol HaMoed, Yom Tov, Shabbos, Yom Kippur. That's the degree that's increasingly higher. And the way to measure it is how much is forbidden to you. So on Yom Tov, on weekday, all work is permissible. On Chol HaMoed, minimal work is forbidden. There's only a little bit amount of work is forbidden. On Yom Tov, on Chol HaMoed, Yom Tov more is forbidden, but you can still cook on Yom Tov. Shabbos is even more forbidden because you can't cook on Shabbos. And Yom Kippur is even more forbidden, you can't even eat. So the less you do, the more holy it is, the more separated. That's what Havdalah, right? Havdalah here means separation.
Shabbos is more holy than Yom Kippur.
No, Yom Kippur is called in Torah Shabbos Shabbosim, Shabbos of Shabboses. And Yom Kippur, you have more restrictions than you do on Shabbos. At any rate, Yom Kippur is never on Sunday anyway, so you don't have this problem.
On Saturday.
Yom Kippur could be on Saturday, but Yom Kippur is never on Sunday.
That's why we fast. You don't normally.
We do. We would
Shabbos, but
on Yom Kippur. We would fast on Shabbos. That's right. If Yom Kippur is on Shabbos, we fast on Yom Kippur on Shabbos. It's happened.
It's happened.
It happens.
Not that long.
Yeah, but it's never going to be on Sunday, and I don't think it's ever on Friday either. You can figure it out. The calendar is set up that the first day of Rosh Hashanah is never a Sunday, Wednesday or Friday. Yom Kippur is 10 days later, so
10 days.
whatever day of the week the first day of Rosh Hashanah is on. Yom Kippur is going to be 2 days later, right? No, 3 days later, 2 days later.
10 days, 3
days later.
3 days.
So if Yom Kippur is not going to be on Sunday, Rosh Hashanah is not going to be on Sunday, Yom Kippur is never going to be on Tuesday, Wednesday, never be on Wednesday. If Rosh Hashanah is never going to be on Wednesday, Yom Kippur is never, Rosh Hashanah is never going to be on Wednesday, then Yom Kippur is never going to be on Sunday. Thursday, Friday, Shabbos, and then Sunday the next day. Never going to be on Sunday. And if Rosh Hashanah is never on Friday, Yom Kippur is never on Tuesday, on Wednesday. What did I miss?
Thursday?
No, sorry. If
So it's never on Monday, Wednesday, or
Rosh Hashanah is never on Sunday, Wednesday, or Friday.
Sunday, Wednesday. Or...
Loy Adu Rosh,
Sunday, Sunday.
which means Yom Kippur will never be on. Come on, we're bad at math here, all of us.
No, I'm remembering I read it in ornithology that
It should be in there, yeah.
You should never. No, you should never. Basically, what it said at the end was in plain English is you should never start a new job on a Monday, Wednesday, or Friday. Those are the 3 days you should never start anything new. You should never move into a house, your new house on a Monday, Wednesday, or Friday. You should never start anything new.
It's probably built on Rosh Hashanah.
Sunday or Tuesday.
Okay, yeah, okay. That's probably a connection to the fact that Rosh Hashanah is not,
Yeah,
not on Sunday, Monday, or Wednesday.
It's just
Sunday,
reminding me.
Wednesday, or Friday. I do. Sunday, Wednesday, Friday is never the first day of Rosh Hashanah. So figure out from there when Yom Kippur can't be. Okay, anyway, so that's the order. And therefore, if you're going from a higher holiness to a lower holiness, you don't make Havdalah, which would be from Shabbos going to Yom Tov. Sorry, then you're going from a higher to a lower, and you do make Havdalah. If you're going from a lower to a higher, then you don't make Havdalah. And the analogy that Rashbam gives is like Shabbos is the king, the higher holiness, and Yom Tov is the minister, lower holiness. And you don't, when the king is arriving, you don't tell the king, hold on a second, I got to go walk the minister to the door. You let the minister out himself when the king is here, right? When it's the other way around and your king is leaving and your minister is coming, you could tell, right? Yom Tov is coming and Shabbos is leaving. The king is coming and the minister is leaving. Sorry, the minister is leaving and the king is coming. You can tell the minister, hold on a second, I want to go accompany the king. That you can do. But you can't tell the king, hold on a second, I want to go accompany the minister. So you can't tell Shabbos, hold on a second, I want to say goodbye to Yom Tov. But you could tell Yom Tov, hold on a second, I want to say goodbye to Shabbos. That you could do.
Abraham did that to Hashem.
Sorry?
Abraham did that.
That's supposed to, yeah, it's hosting guest.
When the
Okay.
angel showed up.
Okay, Haragil, he didn't know he was talking to Hashem. No, he didn't know he was talking to Hashem. He still said, all right, didn't know it was angels, right? Okay, we'll put it aside. Okay, Haragil, it's not okay. This is the beginning of the text. That's not the main reason why it's quoted here. It was quoted here to contradict Rabbi Shia. Rabbi Shia said a minimum of 3, maximum of 7. And this text just began with the list of days that you would say Havdalah. And then it said, Haragil, one who is familiar. So if you're familiar, you're comfortable with Hebrew, Oimer Harbe, you can say many Havdalahs. Doesn't give a number. It just says, if you're comfortable with Hebrew, go ahead. Declare as many distinctions as you'd like. That's what this text says. And if you're uncomfortable, so you're not comfortable with Hebrew, you're not familiar with Hebrew, you can't just go on and on making distinctions between whatever. Oimer Achas, only say one. So here's the contradiction. Rabbi Oshie said a minimum of 3, maximum of 7. Here we have a minimum of 1. Oh, so what should be your question on the Gemara right now? It isn't long to be done, so what should be your question on the Gemara right now? You're touching it.
One who said that it should be minimum of 3.
Okay, okay. Let's get a second. So Gemara answers 1 second before we put Rabbi Yehuda on the table because it's an interesting point. But let's conclude the Gemara's answer, and then I'm going to ask you again what you think the Gemara's question should be, or what your question would be on the Gemara. Okay, so here's the contradiction. The Rabbi Oshia, who's a sage of the Gemara's era, says minimum of 3, maximum of 7. And here the Gemara, a Mishnaic age text says minimum of 1, maximum is whatever, doesn't give a maximum. Answers the Gemara, Tanoihi. Don't fret. Within the Mishnaic era itself, they disputed. So this isn't someone of a post-Mishnaic era disputing that which is stated in the Mishnaic era, because in the Mishnaic era itself was a dispute. And we cite to the following. The Rabbi Yochanan said, Rabbi Yochanan again is one of the early generations of the post-Mishnaic era. He himself studied under those who are the Mishnaic era. He was one of those guys who was a bridge between the two generations. Yeah.
He studied in Eretz Yisrael.
He studied both in Eretz Yisrael and came to Babylonia. Both. He said, quote, Benon Shel Kadoshim, the son of the holy people, who himself, the Gemara will identify who that is in a moment, but his nickname is Benon Shel Kadoshim, the son of the holiness. Son of holiness, we'll talk about who he is in a second and why. But Rabbi Levi said, the son of holiness, who himself was a Tana, himself was a scholar of the Mishnaic era, Omer Achas, would say only one declaration of separation of Havdalah. But the people by large, Loimar Shalish would say 3. So Rabbi Levi is telling us that in the Mishnaic era itself, you had different practices. You had Benon Shel Kadoshim. You had this scholar known as the son of the holy, who would make only one declaration of Havdalah, and everybody else would do 3. So we see already a split in custom before. And therefore, when Rabbi Shia says minimum of 3, and you see someone else says minimum of 1, relax. It's not a contradiction between one generation and another. It's actually a difference in custom that goes back to the earlier generation itself.
Also,
Clear?
minimum of 1 could be minimum.
Minimum of 1
you can
is
do many.
Yeah, right. But
There's no
but
limit.
Rabbi Shia said minimum of 3,
Yeah.
which means you can't go less than 3.
Yeah.
There's the issue. The maximum issue, not so much the question as much as you can't go less than 3,
So it's
according to
gonna
Rabbi
be-
Shia, whereas this text says you can go less than 3. You can say 1 or 2 even. So Rabbi Yochanan says it's not a contradiction. Sorry, the Gemara tells us that it's not a contradiction between someone in the Mishnaic era contradicting someone in the post-Mishnaic era. This itself was 2 different customs within the Mishnaic era.
That's what John to the Mace is saying.
It's responding to the Mitzvahs.
Right. It's responding to the Mace.
Yes.
Saying there is that Mace, but
There's a response.
within it.
That's correct. If it was unilateral, uniform, that everyone in the Mishnaic era was doing X, then someone from the post-Mishnaic era could have come and changed that. But if within the Mishnaic era itself you had divergent customs, then one person in the post-Mishnaic era can say, I'm going with that custom, which is what Rabbi Shia is doing. In the Mishnaic era itself, there was someone who said 1 and someone who said minimum of 3. And Rabbi Shia says, I think you should go a minimum of 3 like that custom. So he's taking sides in an earlier contradiction.
Not even a text, that's practice that was observed by someone. That response by the Gemara.
Yeah.
So that's even higher.
Yeah.
Authority.
In many ways. Yeah.
Because it's a practice.
So now to that,
It's
what,
presenting the Gemara is presenting a practice.
so what should be your question on the Gemara now? We touched on it before. Tosfos' question. We already said earlier there's a Mishnaic era person who said a minimum of 1. Who was that? Yesterday. Yehuda Nasi. So why is the Gemara introducing here a new question as if it's a new question, and then telling us it's a dispute from the Mishnaic era? We already had this issue. We already declared that it's a dispute in the Mishnaic era. That Rabbi Shia disagrees with Rabbi Yehuda. We already did this already. It's like a re-exercise of the same thing. It's funny. Yeah. So Tosfos says, you're right. It could have gone down that route. But the Gemara decided to go down this route because Rabbi Yehuda Nasi is not a text that speaks of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi's practice. It's someone who came and related to us of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi's practice. Whereas this is a straight text that says minimum of 1. And therefore it's better to go with this one. There are other ways of approaching this, but that's a good question.
But it's also weird, the minimum of 1, because right before it mentions that it's for someone who doesn't speak Hebrew. And it says the holy of holiest, or someone who's obviously a very good scholar.
Oh, that's
it says he's going
very good question. Why would this person who's referred to in nickname as Benon Shel Kadoshim, sons of holiness, take the minimalist version and do the smallest Havdalah?
And right before it says that's for someone who didn't speak.
Good question.
Hebrew.
Good question. So first, let's read a description of who this Benon Shel Kadoshim is. Who is this? Everybody following? Let's bring us to where we are. Rabbi Shia said minimum of 3, maximum of 7. A Mishnaic text said minimum of 1. To which the Gemara says this question of minimum of 1 or minimum of 3 was already a disputed custom within the Mishnaic era, and Rabbi Shia is just taking one side. Yeah, okay. Sidebar with Nasi was also a part of this conversation, although for whatever reason the Gemara omits it from this part. Okay. Now, it's asking a very good question. Who is the person who is cited as an example of someone who would only make one declaration of Havdalah in his service? This person who is nicknamed Benon Shel Kadoshim, the son of the holy. And yet he does the minimalist. It's a funny thing. So first of all, let's find out who this guy is, and then perhaps we'll suggest why he's specifically the one who's doing the minimalist Havdalah.
You may have lived in an era where a lot of people couldn't read.
He was doing his own personal practice. He could read, but also it's not reading, it's a question of memory. Memory, being comfortable with Hebrew enough to just say it by heart. Oh, see, it says the Gemara like this. Man Nihu ben Nan Shekadoshim. Who is this person who we're calling son of the holy? And why is he being called son of the holy? It says the Gemara, Rabbi Menachem bar Simai. It's a Yid named Rabbi Menachem bar Simai. Rabbi Menachem bar Simai, as we just learned, is a scholar of the Mishnaic era, he's a Tana. And he was called Benan Shekadoshim, the son of the holy. Why did we call him son of the holy? Why was he referred to as with such an accolade? That was his nickname. Answers the Gemara. He never looked at the form of a zuz, of a coin. He lived such an ascetic lifestyle and so detached from the world that he didn't even know how to identify a coin. The second Chabad Rebbe was like that. The second Chabad Rebbe, the story goes.
Not, sorry, regarding idolatrous.
No. Because he was so detached from the world and so involved in the world of Torah that he didn't even know what a coin looked like. And that's why it's called the son of the holy. So first of all, I should add one thing. When we say something is the son of something, it doesn't necessarily mean his father is. It's a description of who he is. Like, for example, you call someone a bar mitzvah, son of mitzvah, because my father's obligated in mitzvahs, because I'm obligated in mitzvahs, and that's why I become the son of the mitzvah. It's a characterization of his personality. It's correct. It's not uncommon in the Gemara. So when we say son of the holy, he doesn't mean that his father was holy. We mean that he himself is a holy person. And why is he holy? Because again, what does holy mean? This is the whole subject here. The holy here means detached from the world. It's Havdalah, right? Havdalah, separate.
That the second Chabad Rebbe would have had to have been taken care of from birth till death.
Yeah, I'll get to the story of the second Chabad Rebbe in a second. I want to get to that story. Yeah, so keep it in mind.
It's in mind.
So here's perhaps why he's doing the Minlam list Havdalah. Because he himself is so detached from the world that, in other words, we who are like sunken in the world, we want to declare more and more separation so that we can, like, at least for a day of Shabbos, be separated. Whereas to him, the boundary between Shabbos and weekday was so blurred anyway. Because what was the week? For me, at least for 24 hours, I'm forgetting what money looks like. The second Shabbos is over, I remember exactly what money looks like. Right? Hopefully during Shabbos, I'm not thinking about money. But for him, even during the week, he wasn't thinking about money. So the separation, the Havdalah, between Shabbos and weekday was so weak. He made one little declaration. That was it. It was enough for him.
Not preoccupied.
That's right, because even as he's going into weekday, he was half Shabbos mode. Because he didn't even know what money looked like. He was already so Kaddish. He was already so removed. That's what Kaddish means. That's right. Shabbos itself means removed. Kaddish itself means removed. That's what Kaddish means. Something that's more removed, right? We describe the increase of holiness for these days. The more removed you are from mundane activity, the more holy it is. Cholamoid, only one level of removal, so it's one level of holiness. Yom Tov, you're a little more removed, more holy. Shabbos, you're more removed. Yom Kippur, even more removed. So he himself, to begin with, was removed from the world. Didn't even know what money looked like.
There's no contradiction between the two opinions, because one is meant for Sadiqim.
Perhaps.
and one is meant for-
Perhaps. That's what I'm suggesting. That's what I'm suggesting here. Perhaps it's not just a question of disputed practice, but depends on who you were.
Who it applies to.
Who it applies to. That's right.
There's a beautiful yom on that. Exactly that whole idea of that separation between those who know how to separate between the week and Shabbat, and those who are immersed in the Shabbat already preparing for
Yeah.
Wednesday. So there's a beautiful yom exactly on that, the whole concept.
Yeah. So to add to this, we're suggesting now that the one who says one is actually on a higher level. And that's why he only says one. And that's what's meant for. But what was the Mishnah's, the Bryce's formulation? The Mishnah text we quoted earlier, it said, Haragil, one who's comfortable in Hebrew, that's what we translated it. One who's comfortable in Hebrew should do more than one, should add, because he's comfortable in Hebrew. And the one who's uncomfortable, any Haragil is not comfortable, he should only do one. That doesn't fit. So how do you... So the Gemara doesn't say Haragil be'ivrit, one who is comfortable in Hebrew. It just says Haragil, one who's comfortable. So perhaps what this means is Haragil, one who's comfortable in this physical world. You got to make a lot of separations. But the one who's uncomfortable in the world, you only need to make one. So Ragil here perhaps doesn't necessarily only mean he's comfortable in Hebrew and that's why he can do many, but comfortable in the world in general. He's a comfortable person in the world. He's very happy with his lifestyle. That guy, you make a lot of Havdalahs. Ain't a Ragil, you're not comfortable in the world anyway. So you only need to make one. I don't know if this is a literal translation of the Gemara, but perhaps we can read it in.
It's funny that God
Okay, yeah.
called Ezekiel the son of man.
Right, so that's exactly son of man in Hebrew, ancient and modern, just means you're a human, right? Even today, you want to say, yo, buddy, you would say Ben Adam, like, actually say it. Okay.
It was very interesting. It was very interesting yesterday, the 22nd of Talmud. I was by mistake, I went to another page. That's exactly what I saw. There's no happenstance, and it goes into the Sichos with regard to what was it. There's an incredible story told about the Rebbe, who a Reformed rabbi went to him, and he said, "Listen, I want to become Orthodox." So what about your congregation? He said, "They need you now that so do whatever you're doing for yourself, but at the same time, for them, do it the way."
Herbert Wiener.
Exactly.
Wiener.
Exactly. Wonderful rabbi.
Wonderful story about it. It's a great story. What a great book called Nine and a Half
Yeah.
Mystics. But anyway, another time. Anyway, so I want to conclude with this story of the second Chabad Rebbe who didn't know what money looked like. So the story goes, so there were local taxis, wagon driver taxis in Lubavitch, in the town of Lubavitch, where the Chabad Rebbes were stationed for many years. But there was no train station in this little town. So you have to take a taxi to the next town over, wherever it was, to take your train to travel wherever. So whenever the Rebbe at the time would travel, that's what happened. Pay a taxi to take you to the train station. And so the second Chabad Rebbe, considering he didn't know what money looked like, when he would take a taxi, he put his hand into his pocket and whatever he had, give to the taxi. And if the taxi driver was lucky, he got a big tip. And if he wasn't so lucky, he got a smaller tip. But he often getting a nice tip. When he passed, and the third Chabad Rebbe took his position of leadership, the Tzemach Tzedek was a very worldly man. Was a man of halacha. Worldly is not the right word to say it, but in the sense that he was like wasn't ascetic in that sense. He
was worldly.
He was worldly. He was a worldly man. He was like a yes, he engaged the world very much so. He was a halachic ruler, which meant he had to deal with situations that are very unpleasant often. Dealing with, very well known for negotiating his way around the Russian government. He actually was honored by the Russian government as an honorary citizen, and an honorary citizen to such a high level that it was hereditary. His children maintained the status of honorary citizens, which meant they had certain rights and privileges that they used to help the community. So he was a man of like that level. Whereas the second Chabad Rebbe was in the world of Torah learning, completely detached from the world around him. He also ruled halachically, but not in the same way that Tzemach Tzedek did. And the expression about the second Chabad Rebbe goes that if you were to cut his finger, blood wouldn't drip out, Chassidus would drip out. Chassidus would come out instead. Because he was so engrossed. So he, paying the taxi, stick his hand into his pocket, whatever came out, gave it to the taxi, and that was it. No idea what he was giving. And the taxis would often get a nice tip. But when he passed and the third Chabad Rebbe took over, he's also paying taxis when he had to travel, but was asking for change back, as he's supposed to. So the taxis were complaining, but the third Chabad Rebbe, he's not a real Rebbe, because he knows how to take change back. It's not a real Rebbe. That's the story that goes about the second and third Chabad Rebbe. And it all comes back to this idea that Benon Shakadoshim, we didn't know even what a coin looked like, and he's Dafka the one that only made one Havdalah. So tomorrow, God willing, we're going to go through what are the seven. If you can maximize and go up to 7 Havdalahs, what Havdalahs are you making? We already know 4 of them, actually 3 of them, because one of the 4 is only to recap to be similar to the closing. We know 3, separating between the holy and the mundane, between light and dark, and between the Jewish people and the nations of the world. But we said a maximalist can go up to 7. What are the other 4? That the Gemara will tell us, God willing, tomorrow, and it's all going to be built on various different verses where Hashem says, I separate between this and this. So that's what we're going to get to, God willing, tomorrow. Okay, have a wonderful day.
A beautiful explanation I want to regard to the whole concept of even the originalists had a debate between themselves.